traditional ad agencies, if you think like Mad Men, they really for years and years, you know, they became mature in the 50s really, and they owned the brand and marketing channels. And that's something that you can see in our culture today, and when people talk about, you know, shows like Mad Men and just the ad or agency exec world and what that's like. We in the 90s, of course, with the late 90s, with the merging of web shops, so companies that were just trying to put businesses on the web, it was fascinating to watch that happen, because I didn't join the interactive agency space until '99. So before that, I was always in hardcore technology and internet infrastructures. So to watch the sort of the battle that ensued as by the late 90s, as a lot of these traditional ad agencies mixed with consultancies and web tech companies to form huge conglomerates. I was actually a part of a director in one of them called March 1st, which was the world's largest internet agency at the time, 10,000 employees in 70 locations. They crashed and burned at the dot-com bubble burst just as fast as they grew. So it became the largest bankruptcy in US history before Enron. So we learned a lot during the sort of the infancy of Web 1.0 days. One of the things that they were trying to, one of our core business models was that we wouldn't build any websites that were less than $1 million. So we were targeting Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000, and of course, you know, after you build 500 websites, you know, what next? Because who else can afford $1 million? So it was a very interesting time. We learned a lot. It was very difficult to program at that time, to make things truly interactive, because it was before the Ajax days. So the web was still extremely static, and we had the growth of app servers and web servers and database servers and stuff that were specific for the web, that sort of and CMSs that cropped up to try and address these new infrastructures that we were creating to serve up, you know, incredible technologies. So it was another good time for startups, without a doubt. And I actually had a startup in 2001 at the end of the dot-com bubble burst. So we ended up a couple years later, fell into the dawn of Web 2.0, which was fantastic, and we were able to do incredible experiences online using invisible page refreshes and things that Ajax allows us to do. Analytics were starting to really blossom and help us to see that we could measure this stuff, measure what customers and users were doing online, and prove the adoption rates, improve the conversions, which was really key to I think getting interactive agencies and getting the web into the brand's minds that they wanted to be there. But we were continually battling the traditional agencies. So so we were always talking that brand, you know, that we needed a consistent brand, consistent look and feel across all channels, you know, offline, out of home, advertising, billboards and stuff, and print, as well as what we were doing online. And they still wouldn't quite let us have all the reins. So in the late 2000s there, we had social media channels came online, multiplayer games became a really huge billion-dollar industry, mobile exploded on the scene. With all of these things coming together and new delivery models and monetization models, it changed the face of internet agencies and also brands, and they started seeing that this was a mature market and a mature channel, or number of channels that they could reach their customers in. So it really changed things a lot by 2010. So sort of to talk to how this transition happened, between 2001 and 10, there were massive agency conglomerations and roll-ups. So if you were a shop of 40 to 80 people, which is a great sized boutique agency, they would quickly grow into 200 to 400 people. And I was a part of these agencies when this happened, and then blossomed into 2,000 plus. So what we started seeing was that the most creative and innovative work would kind of get stifled and be very hard to deliver on, and very hard to deliver unique experiences online, or the price would go way up, or it might take longer than a small shop that could be really agile and reactive. And so that started to change sort of the mentality of the brands a bit. So I was noticing in my time that as the agencies grew, many senior leaders like the creative directors and the best UX directors and strategists would leave and start their own agencies or studios because they missed the quick turnaround and the excitement and the creative and innovation that they can bring. So between just like the last 5 years, really, 2010 to 15, we have more than half the world's largest brands starting to feel that they're large traditional and digital agencies of record, that those accounts might not be providing the best possible online experience, online and offline experience for their customers, that they couldn't move fast enough to react to changes in the market, because of course it's moving very, very quickly these days. So they started not renewing their AORs or putting out RFPs or calls to action to invite boutique agencies to come and pitch. And so lots of large brands, Coke, for example, and McDonald's and many others that I've stumbled on over the years, have started to increase the number of boutique agencies that they work with, and some of them have won almost an AOR status for these massive brands, which is really exciting for them because these are sometimes billion-dollar budgets. So the aha moment came for me that after having been a part of a number of these very large mergers and acquisitions and watching agencies get too large and lose their vision and their edge, I became more fond of smaller studios over and over again. It's a lot more fun, it's innovative, it's exciting. Tier 1 agencies were also increasing their rates. I mean, they have excessively high rates, which are fantastic for Fortune 100, but not the thing for mid-market or small business. So I found that large agencies, I was told directly not to pitch after or respond to RFPs in MPO or government space, and especially not startups. So they were kind of seen as not being able to afford the tier 1 agency rates, or not be mature enough to work as a vendor in that space, or as a client in that space. So I had aha. Let's launch an agency that will charge just half the rates of the large agencies, keeping our overhead under control and not having fancy flagship offices, but develop new models to work directly with the underserved markets. So especially startups and small business and mid-market, but particularly startups, which was a really overlooked niche without a doubt. So exploring why most agencies don't want to work with startups. So most large agencies focus on private, corporate sector, and particularly large brands that are publicly traded. They want the glitz and the glamour and the press that they get in being associated with these really large, high-profile brands. That's understandable, and you can win, amazing awards with them too. That will give your agency a lot of credential. Not saying people shouldn't do that and that they shouldn't go after that, but so the large brands and agencies, they know how to work with each other too. So as a delivery person and a client manager person, I've seen over the years, when I would engage with a Fortune 500 company and plug in with their project manager or their marketing manager, or whoever we would be working with, they understood our process and their contracts. It was mature professional process and relationships, very clear expectations. They would follow the statement of work, the scope, and assumptions very clearly. They could be reminded of them, but they usually were right on board. The marketing organizations inside most large brands, they outsource almost everything, and they act kind of as program managers, traffic cops, and brand police more than anything else. So it's the agency's role to truly help lead them and guide them strategically and creatively in all the right places. Government contracts, they usually go to the lowest bidder, and NPOs, nonprofits, can be very frugal to the point of absurdity in the eyes of large agencies. There's a huge stigma about nonprofit, so they generally don't try to go after them at all. Startups are seen as flaky, difficult to work with. They're inexperienced and unpredictable. They're extremely cash poor, so that they, understandably so, would be overlooked by mid and large agencies. And from our experience, it is tricky. There's a lot to learn from them, but there's also a lot of reward and a lot of rewarding relationships that you can build. So we'll be talking about that. So why engage with startups? So from our experience, and from my experience of having been an advisor on a number of startups, or have my own, startups are fun. They're very energetic, passionate, exciting, engaging, super diverse, very fast to move and make decisions. It's great because it's a small team usually, sometimes just the founder. You're working with the true decision maker, and you can help them pivot very quickly, and they need to move very quickly too, to react to the market. Things change really, they change very fast. So they're a lot of fun to work with, and the passion comes behind. These are people who, they're not only like owning the brand for a corporation or something, for some large corporation. They're owning the brand because it is their baby. Like, they built it, it's their dream, and they're overly passionate about it, but almost to a flaw. It's fantastic. They're really fun to work with. They're open to a lot of criticism. They appreciate feedback and suggestions and direction. They're out there looking for that from advisors and from other startups and from angels and stuff, mentors. They're looking for. They're not saying that they know everything for sure, and they're excited when you're interested in their dream. So it's a lot of fun to be there with them and handhold them through that. Let's see, if an agency joins with them early on to help fill the gaps of UX, creative, strategy, marketing, press, public relations, and all that kind of stuff, different things that they need, it sets you up to be the potential agency of record for life, like an ongoing relationship that you've helped them succeed, you've helped them build their dream, and wear the hats that they're not able to wear. And if you can do it, frugally or carefully, or with a business model that's going to work, or maybe a shared equity or something like that, those are options that they never would have had a chance of getting at all with other agencies, with traditional agencies or large digital agencies these days. So the potential for equity and experience in running a product business with a seat on the board is a great reason for engaging with startups. For us, for example, when we help build a startup and join the startup, we also will take equity and a seat or two on the board to help drive that. It gives our team a lot of experience in running another company as well, but also it gives the startup, the founder, a whole team behind them with like an entire agency instead of just one or two seats, which is really different. And apparently investors and angels and stuff think that that's a great plus, and we agree. So advice on unique challenges of startups. So the cost of effort to land and then manage a startup might be close to that of trying to land a 6-figure, 7-figure project. So you could certainly put a lot of manpower and time and effort and patience into trying to land them and then manage them and help them through some of their major hurdles. So some agencies would say, well, why don't we just put all of that into trying to just get another 6-figure project, which is understandable, that without a doubt, follow the money. So I think there's no way around that. It's something that certainly takes an effort. We build in the cost of that into the amount of equity that we will take. If this is an equity deal, the amount of equity that we would like to include in having that relationship with them. So we sort of pass that along into our sort of deferred compensation, but deferred compensation seen as equity. Another challenge about startups is they usually come from a huge number of industries and backgrounds. So they have no idea about how to manage a digital agency vendor relationship, contracts, deliverables, yet alone their own company. So they need a lot of education, they need a lot of hand-holding, they need a lot of reminders about deadlines, milestones, reviews, handoffs and approvals, just everything that would normally be kind of second nature to a large company. These things are definitely not second nature to startups and founders who don't have an experience with that kind of vendor relationship. So go in with that mindset, and you just need to help them and remind them regularly in weekly status reports or whatever what that relationship's about and what your contractual obligations are. Another sort of challenge with them is that they're exceedingly protective of their brand. So if you come along and join them after they've already established a brand. So they have a name and a logo mark and a slogan, maybe even a website. It's really challenging to change that for them, of course, because they're tied to it. They're passionate about it. They feel it. They have an emotional attachment to it. Maybe one of their best friends or their mom or somebody helped them create it, or it could be another agency that just helped them through it. And the best thing that you can do is approach it lightly, approach it carefully. Let them know that maybe perhaps a brand audit for a slight brand refresh or a little bit of user research or market research, just to make sure that that brand is resonating and that it works for what their goals are, would be a really good idea if you could, but tread lightly. I would say that the startups generally don't understand best practice or expert advice or consultancy role, so they need to kind of be reminded carefully. You don't want to have a really large ego or a big head about it, or throw around all of the different successes you've had in your professional life. Instead, again, tread kind of lightly, help them understand, show them examples of what best practice is, like in a user-centered design, or best practice in coding, or best practice in QA and testing, or in research. So just kind of help them see some of those, help them connect the dots. But don't try to, wear, I think, a big pair of pants and try to be the know-it-all, because that will really be off-putting for them. And most of them, this is their first rodeo. Like, they've never done this before. This was their dream, and now not only did they build a product, but they're building a company, and they have to be reminded of that. So there's a lot of education, assistance in business strategy, in fundraising, in market research, user research, testing, feasibility studies. All these things are extremely helpful to help them make sure that they are going to have success, that they're going to succeed in actually attracting customers and revenue. Keep in mind that they're all in different stages of funding too, with unique needs that require a lot of flexibility and patience. This is something that I think most agencies I've ever worked with and at, don't have a lot of experience in, and certainly the strategy team or the BA team might be more focused on business strategy or marketing strategy, but not fundraising strategy, or used to having to wear that hat too, or look at things through that lens. So they are in different stages of funding. Some of them are out of cash when you engage with them, and they only have 10 or 20K left. Some of them are getting ready for their Series A, and maybe they have $1 million or $2 million coming. It's all worth the effort of staying in there and helping them overcome each of these hurdles, and helping them plan, either planning for the fundraising, so that they know exactly what the estimates are and exactly what it's going to take to reach each milestone or an MVP, or to help plan for that after that fact, after the funding. But just be there with them. So tips on how to enter the startup space as an agency. Here are a bunch of icons that just kind of talk to different places where you can meet them. I would say that an agency should create a team that's focused on the startup space. It doesn't mean that they can't be strategists and business analysts on other projects too, where you're also making billable money off them. But you do need a team that becomes very aware of the startup space and the tools that are out there, the places to find startups and where to meet them. One good idea is to take a desk or a small office at a local co-working or incubator space like eWork or something, or WeWork. You can also stalk the lobbies and halls in their public work areas, but it's a great place to meet other startups, to listen to their stories, to listen to their passion and their pain, and find areas where you might be able to help them if it's a product that you believe in too. It's a great place to meet them, and of course cafes as well that are usually in downtown areas during the daytime. Attend angel and VC pitch competitions. So there's lots of them out there. Your different local angel groups or VC funds might have them. We have a couple of them here in Seattle that take place monthly or quarterly. I wrote Techstar on here as one example, of course, Y Combinator and others as well. And GeekWire also has their own. Their local meetups are a great place to find startup businesses or startup products, companies that are just meeting each other because they're trying to overcome their challenges or trying to help each other out. Local maker spaces is a great place to meet industrial designers and inventors and hang out there. Take a few classes, learn how to program in Arduino, but you'll meet a lot of very interesting folks that you might be able to help. And then other local startup events like Startup Week and others that are sponsored by big tech. Expand your business analyst and strategy team and help them have access to the education and tools to understand business strategy, business structure, business plans, and investor kits. So in particular, learn about private equity fundraising strategies. In the US, that's under 506B or 506C. Of course, different countries and jurisdictions have different rules and regulations about raising private equity. Another great one too, of course, is for crowdsourced funding platforms and communities. So becoming active in those communities, listing yourself on TechCrunch, or Crunchbase, sorry, listing yourself on AngelList, and then going on Crowdfunder and going on some of the others that are out there to look at the deals and look at the startups that are out, in different stages of funding. Some are in round 1 or 2 or Series A. It's a great place to learn about those deals. And then of course Kickstarter and Indiegogo, which these days are more geared towards customer acquisition and sort of a marketing tool, but there are some select products and select types of fundraising that happen on there. The great thing about those two is that they're non-equity crowdsourced funding, so you do not have to share equity, and they're not SEC deals. So down here in the States with Securities and Exchange Commission, they're outside of 506B and C because you're not offering securities. But those are being able to strategically help select those for your startups and help them go out and raise money. There's an opportunity to build the marketing page for them, for investors to check to trip over. There's an opportunity to build a video or two selling their product or service to potential investors in all these different kinds of communities, and even to help them create a blog and a social media presence and start to just generate that buzz and get press releases out. So these are all important things that would be about entering the startup space. Switching gears just a little bit, that's directly related. So startup acceleration. So once you have a startup and you're helping them out, these are the kinds of services that you can provide as an agency to help them out. You need to learn bootstrap model, lean, agile, and bootstrapped approach to help them with their limited budgets. But areas that you can sell on is market research and analysis, competitive research, user-centered design research, strategic growth and exit planning, pre and post-launch support, business plan writing, investor intros and kit preparation, actually make those introductions, write the emails, get those rolling. Business registration, some of them, they need that help as well. It doesn't take a lawyer to start an LLC or an Inc. or corporation. Branding and marketing support, project management, execution, and fundraising consulting services. These are all great services that a digital agency that's focused on, that has a focus on startups as well, should be able to offer. For us, this is going into some of our story just a bit now from our experience. So Solid State Pros, we ended up creating a proprietary process for vetting startups and for vetting new products. That turned into something that we were using internally here as a process, and we turned it into a tool that we're launching into closed beta next month down at the Collision Conference in New Orleans. But so we created something called VetCloud. And this is a streamlined group decision-making and vetting SaaS tool in the cloud. So it's a dashboard environment that allows users to vet, build, and iterate on deals and investment opportunities using our proprietary process. We actually have a patent pending on this one as well, on the tool itself and the process. The current vetting processes out there, they're very time-consuming. They don't capture data associated with actual deal evaluation along the way. Things that go through our system and end up producing most of the materials required for business plan and later an investor kit. So it's beat up and vetted by 10, 20, 30 people, however many are using that instance of this tool in a very structured, data-rich sort of environment. We also focuses on anonymous deal evaluation and unbiased feedback. So we found that in order to have like the highest quality vetting. So we found that in a lot of investment groups and circles and just human nature in general, there will be an alpha, somebody that everybody looks to, or somebody who maybe has the most money, and they will have the largest voice. And it could be that other people have fantastic ideas and they've looked at the market, and they might be a smaller player, or seen as a smaller player in a group or at a table. And so our system gets rid of that, the difference, and focuses on the actual product or startup idea itself, and helps everybody vet and do decision making on that instead. So hopefully you can check it out sometime. For us, as an example, we had 4 companies that we were a part of through this process last year, and we're planning on taking equity in about 20 companies this year that come out of this incubator, as an instance for us. And one thing I wanted to, for anyone who might be interested, is how does the equity option work, or how can it work for startups and agencies? So for us, we look at reducing our blended rate and converting that total discount to equity. And so this is actually a slide from one of our decks from that. So it shows that our normal blended rate for services would be like XXX, might be 125 an hour, or whatever our normal blended rate is for this particular type of product. We'll discount that to some amount. It could be a 30% or a 50% discount, whatever that discount is, for the startup community, for this particular startup then. And then what we do is we take the total, the equity compensation then that we're going to be looking for would be the total dollar amount of discounted services divided by the latest dollar value per share of the client, or of that startup. So that would end up helping us come up with a number of shares for Solid State Pros, or a percentage of the shares that are outstanding. So this works really well. This is sort of the entry point for us. So we do this during the initial stages, during business plan and investor kit, and perhaps even brand creation and some other stepping stones that we take down the road. And then this model can also work once we start the project. So once the project actually turns on and we're executing on it as a services organization, we can continue to operate at a discounted rate. We call it a discounted equity rate, but we're going to be continuing to accumulate more shares of that company, or another percentage, of course, of equity. So that's how this works for us. It's worked really well. I think that there are probably other models out there that could work, but this is how we've been working it. And that is the end of my presentation today. So I'm going to turn this over to questions. Hey, Chris.
Hi, that was great. You've really given us some. Well, let's just say, Steve, that you've really given us the beans, right? You've told us what's going on and how you're doing it. A lot of detail here that you've shared, and I just not everyone is willing to do that. So thank you so much for that, Marissa. I've got a few questions I'd like to ask you,
Okay.
Steve. Let me start with one. Marissa's sitting in the office with me, behind me. I think of startups, and I think of my experience. I sit on 2 round tables, each with 10 or 11 business owners in them, and we all share the ups and downs of our business with each other. If there's one characteristic, just one, that you'd look for in an organization that you would really like to engage in, what would it be? What would be that characteristic?
I think it would probably be passion. I think that they need to be head over heels, passionate about it, as much as they are about anything else in their life, because that's the only thing that's going to keep it alive. It's the only thing that's going to make it, deliver in the end.
Push the perseverance, huh?
Yeah, because of course we all know, small business or startups are extremely difficult, and there are ups and downs every day, and nothing is ever the way that you plan, and you have to be able to pivot very quickly. But you can't lose your passion for what you're doing, or belief in that product. Or that service.
Is there a stage that you know, is there a stage that you really like to come in at, you know, in the go-to-market strategy?
I think just personally, I don't know about the rest of our company, but personally, I like to be involved in the earliest stage where it was an idea, it was somebody's dream, and they have another job somewhere else that they love or hate, and they just had an amazing idea, and we vetted the heck out of it with our system and discovered, whoa, there's a huge market opportunity here. It's something that's been completely overlooked. Let's dive in together. And so I think that's my favorite, because we get to create the brand and everything from scratch, and guide them along the entire process. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. You must also, you know, take back my own experience. You know, people investing in the business.
Yeah.
You must see people that are really reluctant to give equity up and to trade it for services and that side of things. What can you say there? How can you relate that experience? And do you have an example of where someone was really reluctant and has later suggested that the value that's been brought to the table has been exceptional?
I really have not found that there's a lot of reluctance in the early stage startups to having to give up some equity. You know, we have a pretty fair model. So every time and again, whether we're getting 8 or 10% or we're getting 20 or 30%, depending on what stage we're at and you know, how much of a discount we're giving, they seem excited. Like every time, still, they feel the value that they're getting. You know, it's doing things that they never could have done on their own. They didn't know where to go with the idea. So yeah, I haven't found that there's been a problem. The only time probably is where they've already had a dilution or two, or they've already been restructured, and so maybe they're in round 2 or 3. And so for us, there's less room at the table. Like they may only be interested in 5% or 10%. So but early stage startups seem to not have any problem with that. They think that they're getting a great value for what they're getting.
I think of some of the comments that you made about helping bring some business acumen to what might be an otherwise fairly liquid situation, or, you know, a situation, liquid perhaps not the right word, but a very fluid situation where things are changing. You know, you've got an entrepreneur jumping from things to things to things and needing to sort of get people focused on what's really important.
Yeah, that can be really challenging. You have to be you know, cognizant of their life outside of their other job, you know, and so you want to help them make sure this is not just a hobby for them. And I think that, you know, so you have to work different hours too. But I think the passion is the thing that makes that not a hobby. And so you want to make sure that these startups are serious about it, that they want to dive in, that they want this to be, their goal is for this to be not only their lottery ticket out, you know, from what they're doing right now, but to be their new life, like to be something that even if they're going to sell it in 3 years, you know, if they want an acquisition, that they're on board 100%. And you can kind of sniff that out early on when you're needing a lot of assistance on the business plan and the press release, when there's a lot of back and forth. If they don't have the time, I would say that's a big flag. If they don't have the time to help you craft that and to respond quickly enough, or they're skipping meetings, you know, that you have like set up with them weekly or whatever, that would be a red flag that probably this is not their passion. Like they need to focus on something else, and they can come back to this another day.
They need a high degree of respect in the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Doing the things that they say they're going to do. Marissa, is there any questions that you'd like to get out to Steve?
Yeah, we've got a question here on our end. So Steve, what would you say are 3 rules of thumb to live by if your company is niched?
3 rules of thumb. I would say one would be flexible. Educate yourself often, like very frequently and often. Things change really quickly. So flexibility, though, that was about be flexible in terms of your rates, in terms of your time to meet with your client, flexible in terms of your revenue, your revenue streams. You're not. There's a lot of unknown. You can try to help control that as much as possible, but flexibility is really key. And then probably the third thing I would say would be that you need to be more outgoing than ever. Probably you need to. So when you're trying to find new clients in the Fortune 100 space or Fortune 500 space, it's a different place and it's a different beast than you're going to be looking for work from the startup space or from the startup community. So there are a lot of cafe meetings. That's where they do work, and a lot of these co-working spaces. So it's a lot of footwork. It's a lot of meetings, a lot of hand-holding. That you're going to have to devote a lot more time than usual to be their right hand to help them out.
I think of the people, in the cafe writing the ideas down on the napkin, and perhaps forgetting it there and having to run back, and deals being done on napkins in Starbucks, et cetera, around the world now, of course.
Exactly, and sometimes they leave those out for people to find. Apple's famous for that.
Yeah, we've got another one, Steve. If you'd be so kind to share, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from niching your agency? Maybe a couple mistakes that you made along the way?
Yeah, so I think biggest thing that we've learned as a lesson learned probably would be to be careful not to have all of your eggs, of course, in one particular vertical basket. So as I said, startups are very very fickle and frugal, and in different stages of their fundraising. And so definitely, just like you wouldn't build your entire agency around just RFP responses, you'd tank yourself pretty quickly if that's all you're doing. Same goes for startups. Like I don't think that somebody should or could go out and literally just start a digital agency tomorrow that focuses 100% on startups, unless you had $1 million in the bank to kind of help you through it. So it's definitely tricky. So I would say probably make sure that you're not putting more than 30% of your eggs or so in that basket. So in terms of your effort and your expected revenue and your sales efforts. So just make sure that you continue to diversify with paying clients, with Fortune 500, mid-market, whatever, but companies that are well established, that have revenues, that have needs, and that'll kind of keep you going. I think one thing I didn't mention which was probably alluded to in the presentation, but I think is an important thing to note here, is that by creating this model working with startups, whether existing startups or new startups, we've actually created a sales funnel for the agency too, which is obvious. So we are able to handhold them through this and get some equity if we want, depending on the business. But also, it becomes a sales funnel because we're building the estimates, we're building the project plans, we're building the investor kits and the business plans. So we know what it's going to take to deliver on this MVP product or whatever, and we're the ones then who end up delivering on that. So we create a sales funnel for our own team, even if it is maybe at a discounted rate. We're at least able to be in the startup while we're also getting paid. So that's very unique. Where usually if you're in the startup space, you're just cost. So for us, it's an interesting space to be able to get a seat at the table, get some equity, and then also make an hourly rate while we're actually executing on the work. I just wanted to add that.
The balance in it all, really the balance in it all. From keeping your agency growing internally and keeping the funding appropriate for your own operations, while balancing that in helping startups and growing an equity position in those firms.
Exactly. Very unique. I mean, I have not come across that. There's only one other agency so far that we've found over the past few months that is a little bit similar.
Well, we've got a number of them listening to you today. Who knows where that could end up taking things?
Yeah, awesome.
And it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I love to say. Like when I said earlier that, we're all second and third cousins in the digital agency side, it's important to note that we're, just one second, I got pause screen sharing. It's important to note that we, there's enough space in the market for all of us to work. There's plenty of work out there and to be able to share hours and share clients and share resources. So it's just about delivering the best user experience, delivering the most, and helping all of us to make more happen. I would love for agencies to finally be able to focus some of their work on startups, because I think the startups will be more successful. The startups will have more successful startups out there that aren't floundering, that don't burn through their cash, and that haven't looked at market research yet, or don't know where to find their customers. So that would be great. I feel like that would be fantastic to be a part of that.
Our boon to our whole economy, really. Right.
Yeah, for real.
Creating great jobs and opportunities. Let's face it, that's so much of what it comes down to in entrepreneurialism.
Yeah,
good,
absolutely.
Good. Marissa, I think we'll go to wrap up. And Steve, thank you so much. I think we're getting a bit of echo there. Oh, thanks very much. Thank you so much for putting the time in today to speak to the Function Point community and just your experience in niche, and specifically in this niche in the startup space. I understand you're coming to Vancouver soon? Yeah,
we're going to make it up there in April finally. You're only 2 hours away, so we need to get up there.
I certainly hope that we can have some lunch together, share some food, and talk a little bit more again. And we'll stay on the line for any of the people that we still have quite a few people that are with us. If others have any other questions they'd like to send in, we'll make sure that we respond to those accordingly. And Steve, thank you so much. Thanks to Marissa and Emma on my team, and I'm sure there's a few people on your team that have helped put things together today.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much, Chris and Function Point. We really appreciate it, and we're continuing to evangelize you guys too.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate that. Thanks very much, everyone.